Caitlin Clark. Making her fourth All-Star appearance and leading the league in steals.
6 words. That's all it took for Caitlin Clark to stop the basketball world in its tracks. A joke gone wrong or a calculated move. Either way, she reminded everyone who truly controls the conversation. Social media exploded. Music narrative shifted. The WNBA, long dominated by careful messaging, suddenly found itself watching a star rewrite the rules in real time. This isn't gossip. This is strategy. This is power. And it's only the beginning. Plum's jab. Clark's empire. Flashback to July 2025, Indianapolis. WNBA All-Star Weekend was supposed to be a celebration of women's basketball at its finest. But Clark? She turned it into a masterclass in influence, and nobody saw it coming.
For the culmination of what has been a wonderful celebration all weekend long.
Gameridge Fieldhouse was packed, nearly 17,000 screaming fans. The energy? Electric. The league's biggest stars had gathered in one place, ready to put on a show. But behind the glamour and highlight reels, something was brewing, something that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. The players had coordinated a bold, unforgettable statement ahead of the game. All wearing black shirts that read, "Pay us what you owe us," right there during warm-ups. This wasn't just fashion. This was activism. The WNBA's collective bargaining agreement was set to expire in October, and the players weren't asking politely. They were demanding their fair share.
The expiration of the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement intentions are running high.
Currently, WNBA athletes receive around 9% of league revenue, a staggering contrast to their NBA counterparts, who get 50%. Music. Many of these women have to play overseas during the off-season just to make ends meet. The message was clear, unified, and necessary. But then, Kelsey Plum opened her mouth, and everything music changed. Plum, the Los Angeles Sparks guard and vice president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, was about to shake the league to its core.
Kelsey Plum to the Sparks. This was the first trade in the league history, and Kelsey Plum heads to LA with the 9th overall pick.
It was sitting there, music, in the post-game press conference, right next to New York Liberty star Sabrina Ionescu. The cameras were rolling. Reporters were listening, music. And then Plum said something absolutely nobody asked for. When discussing the coordinated shirt protest, she admitted, the T-shirt, Just United Front, was determined this morning that we had a music meeting for. And, you know, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
You know, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
Clark couldn't hide her reaction. She rolled her eyes and fired back sarcastically. That really needed to be mentioned? Even in that moment, you could see the discomfort written all over Ionescu's music face. She knew exactly what Plum had just done, and it wasn't good. What was supposed to be a moment celebrating player unity and demanding fair compensation had just been hijacked by what looked like a petty jab at the league's biggest star.
We had a very, that really needed to be mentioned.
Caitlin Clark wasn't even on the court that day, and context matters. She hadn't attended that meeting, and she wasn't playing in the All-Star game because she was recovering from a groin injury she'd been dealing with since mid-July. She was at home, taking care of herself. The WNBA even confirmed Caitlin Clark would miss tonight's Fever game against the Sparks. The idea that she was somehow dodging player activism or not supporting her fellow athletes wasn't just wrong. It was insulting. Clark had been instrumental in bringing unprecedented attention to the league. Since her debut, television ratings had skyrocketed. Merchandise was flying off shelves. Ticket prices were climbing. Expansion fees had jumped from $50 million to $250 million virtually overnight. She was the reason the WNBA was even in a position to negotiate music, better terms in the first place.
Brightest stars in the game, Caitlin Clark going toe-to-toe with the biggest women's basketball star.
Yet here was Plum, music, in front of the entire basketball world, suggesting that Clark and her team weren't really invested in the cause. The backlash was swift and brutal. Social media erupted. Fans called Plum jealous, petty, and short-sighted. Sports analysts piled on, with Colin Cowherd roasting Plum for taking shots at the one player who transformed the WNBA from budget airlines to private jets. The data tells the story. Since Clark's debut, TV ratings have soared. Merchandise is flying off shelves. Ticket prices are climbing fast.
Caitlin Clark will miss tonight's Fever game against the Sparks with a groin issue.
Expansion fees had skyrocketed from $50 million to $250 million virtually overnight. Caitlin Clark had become the league's most valuable bargaining chip in salary talks. Yet Plum chose to publicly go after the WNBA's single biggest asset. Timing? Questionable. Strategy? Even more so. Clark stayed silent. Not a tweet, not a statement, not a single word of defense, music. While the internet erupted on her behalf, and think pieces debated veteran resentment toward rookies, she went about her business. She let the noise swirl around her, perfectly and strategically quiet. This wasn't weakness. This was calculated power. Clark understood something Plum didn't. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Let your success and influence do the talking. And when the moment is right, when the perfect opportunity presents itself, then, and only then, do you strike. This is chess, not checkers. Clark was playing 3 moves ahead, while everyone else was still trying to catch up.
Clark, this is one thing you get with Clark is great pace and great passes. Found Boston perfectly.
Fans defended her online. Analysts debated Plum's comment. Social media churned with outrage. But Clark focused on what mattered: recovery, preparation, and building her empire, brick by brick. Engaging immediately would have made her look defensive. It would have validated criticism and amplified Plum's words. So, she waited. Let the backlash do the work. Let others spin the story. Colin Cowherd roasted Plum on national television. Social media tore apart the logic of attacking the league's biggest draw. Sabrina Ionescu's eye roll became the viral image that carried the narrative. Then, precisely when the moment arrived, Clark struck. Just a day later, Kelsey Plum posted on Instagram celebrating All-Star Weekend, music, captioning her photos with "What a weekend," smiling with teammates at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. But Clark noticed something Plum had completely overlooked: a massive Nike logo in the background. Plum isn't a Nike athlete. She switched to Under Armour in 2022, debuting her own WNBA colorway. Clark, by contrast, is Nike royalty in the league, holding a multi-million-dollar endorsement deal.
WNBA is out with new TV viewership numbers. It's been the most watched in the league.
She wasn't about to let that oversight go unnoticed. Her response? 6 words: "Thank you for the Nike ad." No exclamation points. No emojis. No aggression. Just a razor-sharp, perfectly timed observation delivered with the casual confidence of someone who knows her own power. The internet exploded. Screenshots flooded timelines. Fans called it petty. Others called it genius. Sports blogs and podcasts dissected every angle. In 6 words, Clark reminded everyone of her influence, her brand dominance, and her mastery of the business side of the game, something Plum, despite years in the league, had failed to grasp. The brilliance was in the layers. On the surface, playful irony. Beneath it, strategic, a subtle, unmistakable reminder that Clark is the league's most marketable star.
It's the best get-ahead passer, and her three-point shot.
Plum had unwittingly handed her the perfect setup, and Clark delivered a knockout punch. Precise. Smart. Playful. It wasn't personal. Just devastatingly effective. Clark didn't need to list achievements, ratings, impact, or revenue generation. The 6 words did it for her. Plum went silent. No comeback. No clarification. No defense. Weeks passed. The story simmered while the internet dissected every nuance. Plum knew she had been outplayed. Any response would only make the optics worse. In that moment, Caitlin Clark reminded the world who truly holds the power in women's basketball. Not through words, press conferences, or interviews, but through timing, strategy, and presence. Clark wasn't just a player on the court. She was a masterclass in influence, music, and control. Dominance in the WNBA isn't measured only in points, assists, or highlight reels. It's measured in understanding the moment, reading the room, and knowing when to strike, and, just as importantly, when music to stay silent. With 6 simple words, Clark proved the future of the league isn't just about athletic skill. It's about intelligence, poise, and an unshakable command of both the game and the culture around it. Caitlin Clark didn't just respond. She reminded everyone that in this era of women's basketball, power is earned, timing is everything, and sometimes silence speaks louder than any statement. The power of one star. It wasn't until mid-August, nearly a month later, that Plum finally addressed the situation publicly. Appearing on Sue Bird's podcast, Bird's Eye View, she tried to walk back her comments with what could only be described as damage control. "Oh, I made a bad joke," Plum admitted. "I made a really bad joke."
Wall Street Journal reports the basketball superstar is about to sign a Nike endorsement deal worth $28 million.
Plum had unwittingly handed her the perfect setup, and Clark delivered a knockout punch. Precise, smart, playful. It wasn't personal, just devastatingly effective. Clark didn't need to list achievements, ratings, impact, or revenue generation. The 6 words did it for her. Plum went silent. No comeback. No clarification. No defense. Weeks passed. The story simmered while the internet dissected every nuance. Plum knew she had been outplayed. Any response would only make the optics worse. In that moment, Caitlin Clark reminded the world who truly holds the power in women's basketball. Not through words, press conferences, or interviews, but through timing, strategy, and presence. Clark wasn't just a player on the court. She was a masterclass in influence, music, and control. Dominance in the WNBA isn't measured only in points, assists, or highlight reels. It's measured in understanding the moment, reading the room, and knowing when to strike, and, just as importantly, when music to stay silent. With 6 simple words, Clark proved the future of the league isn't just about athletic skill. It's about intelligence, poise, and an unshakable command of both the game and the culture around it. Caitlin Clark didn't just respond. She reminded everyone that in this era of women's basketball, power is earned, timing is everything, and sometimes silence speaks louder than any statement. The power of one star. It wasn't until mid-August, nearly a month later, that Plum finally addressed the situation publicly. Appearing on Sue Bird's podcast, Bird's Eye View, she tried to walk back her comments with what could only be described as damage control. "Oh, I made a bad joke," Plum admitted. "I made a really bad joke."
Oh, I made a bad joke. Yeah, I made a really bad joke. Tough one.
Suddenly, casual sports fans who'd never clears throat watched a WNBA game in their lives were tuning in to see what the hype was about. Expansion fees skyrocketed to $250 million as investors realized the league's real profit potential for the first time in its 28-year history. For veterans like Kelsey Plum, 2-time WNBA champion with the Las Vegas Aces, a 4-time All-Star, former #1 overall pick, and Team USA representative, this shift had to be hard to watch. Plum is an elite player, averaging over 20 points per game, music, for the Sparks, with years of hard work, dedication, and accolades to show for it. But despite all that, she has never commanded the mainstream attention and financial opportunities that Caitlin Clark has from day one. That's not Clark's fault. That's the reality of star power, marketability, and timing. Some athletes transcend their sport and become cultural icons. Clark is one of them. And while it's understandable that veterans might feel some type of way about a rookie eclipsing visibility and earning potential, that frustration can't be directed at the player who's lifting all boats. Here's the truth some seem reluctant to acknowledge. Caitlin Clark's success is everyone's success. The higher her ratings, the better the next TV deal for all players. The more merchandise she sells, the more revenue the league generates. The more attention she brings to women's basketball, the more young girls will grow up wanting to play, creating a deeper talent pool and a more competitive league in the future. Clark isn't taking anything away from veteran players. She's creating opportunities that didn't exist before. Every player in the WNBA benefits from music, her presence, whether they admit it or not.
A four-time WNBA All-Star, making her Olympic debut.
The increase in the salary cap, improved travel accommodations, better facilities, all of it is possible because the league is finally profitable and sustainable in ways it never, music, has been before. A massive part of that shift is directly attributable to Clark's impact. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. It also needs Kelsey Plum, Sabrina Ionescu, Aya Wilson, Brianna Stewart, and every other talented player who makes the product worth watching. The best-case scenario? Players recognize they're stronger together, that Clark's star power creates opportunities for everyone, and that unity in labor negotiations matters far more than individual egos or perceived slights. The Pay Us What You Owe Us campaign was powerful and music necessary. Players absolutely deserve better compensation, better travel conditions, better resources, and a bigger share of the revenue they generate. But that message gets muddied when it's paired with public callouts of the league's biggest star for missing a meeting while injured. Caitlin Clark, for her part, has handled this balance remarkably well. She respects veteran players, acknowledging the legends who paved the way for her. She's a team player with the fever, distributing the ball, celebrating her teammates' successes, and never making everything about her own stats. She uses her platform to advocate for women's music, basketball broadly, not just for herself. And when faced with criticism or slights, she responds with silence or subtle humor rather than inflammatory rhetoric. That's the mark of someone who understands that long-term success depends not just on individual performance, but on the health and growth of the entire ecosystem. She wins when the WNBA wins. She loses when the league looks petty or divided. She conducts herself in ways that elevate rather than, music, diminish, even when it would be easy to clap back harder.
Caitlin Clark in town. More than $2 million in tickets were sold. That's an all-time WNBA record.
It demonstrated confidence without arrogance, and it effectively ended the back and forth, music, by being so perfectly executed that any response from Plum would have looked defensive or petty. That's masterclass level social media strategy, the kind that makes people forget Clark has only been in the professional league for one season. She carries herself like someone who's been managing fame and public perception for decades, when in reality she's still figuring, music, out this new level of scrutiny in real time. Looking ahead, the Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Plum dynamic promises to remain one of the most compelling storylines in the WNBA.
Clark, I mean, which one is
WNBA players?
Do you feel right now you're the best player in women's college?
Kelsey had a big game. Her team dominated Caitlin's. Will this evolve into a genuine rivalry with mutual respect, the kind that elevates both players and creates matchups fans can't wait to watch? Or will it remain tinged with the awkwardness and tension that has characterized their interactions so far? The answer likely depends on how both players choose to frame the relationship going forward. If Plum can move past any frustration or resentment and recognize Clark as an ally rather than a threat, there's real potential for a positive dynamic, two elite guards pushing each other to be better. If Clark continues to handle criticism with grace and humor, letting her performance speak for itself, she'll keep winning over even music, the skeptics who want to see her fail. And if both players keep the focus on basketball rather than social media beef or press conference drama, everyone wins. The Indiana Fever versus Los Angeles Sparks matchups? They've just become must-watch television.
She had a big game. Team had a big, dominating game over Caitlin's.
Fans will be glued to their screens, wondering if extra intensity emerges when these two face off. Will Plum defend Clark with playoff-level aggression like she did during the All-Star game? Will Clark go out of her way to put up big numbers against Plum, specifically making a statement on the court rather than through Instagram comments? Or will both players handle it professionally, treating it like any other game, while the media and fans desperately search for drama, music, that isn't really there? The truth is, both players are too smart and too focused on winning to let distractions derail their seasons. Clark is trying to lead the Fever to the playoffs and prove she's not just a regular season phenomenon. Plum is trying to rebuild the Sparks into championship contenders after moving from Vegas. Neither can afford to let personal feelings interfere with team success. What makes this situation so fascinating is that it represents a generational shift happening in real time. The old guard is being forced to share space with a new star who arrived with more fanfare, more money, and more attention than anyone before her. That's uncomfortable. It creates natural friction, but it also creates opportunity, growth for the league, and for individual players. Handled correctly, this could become one of those legendary rivalries people remember for decades. Bird versus Magic, Jordan versus everybody, LeBron versus the world.
Is Mr. Magic Johnson, your friend, versus Mr. Larry Bird simply the best player rivalry of all?
Clark versus Plum could be the rivalry that defines this era of women's basketball. A competition music that pushes both players to greatness while giving fans compelling storylines to follow season after season. Or it could fizzle out completely, becoming just another forgotten moment of social media drama that seemed important at the time, but ultimately didn't matter. The difference will be determined by what happens next, by how these two elite athletes choose to write the next chapter of this story. 6 words change the conversation, but the question remains, how will the WNBA adapt to a world where one player can command attention, shape narratives, and redefine power in real time? Caitlin Clark isn't just playing basketball. She's rewriting the rules. And if this is only the beginning, what does the next chapter look like? Who will rise or fall under the new spotlight? The story is far from over. The game will never be the same,